Hello and welcome to the garden of your black roses. Of your black roses. Of the black roses. This is fan fiction. This is the next and final written chapter of Yokai Tamer Hope Guild. You might hear a little bit of sound in the background. That's either my phone moving, because I'm reading from my phone as I'm recording, or it will be the laptop, which has Sims 3 running on it. But yeah. So, Chapter 4. Sigurd was taking a leisurely stroll through the city back towards the League headquarters. He had just spent some time at the jeweler's upgrading his beads and increasing the aura emitted from them. It had been a while since he had been able to do that, and the advice he had received from Ember had been helpful. Kire had also echoed the same advice, so he knew he couldn't go wrong. Looking up, he was met with a semi-familiar sight. Ember stood on the bridge looking out over the water. Her outfit was different for once. The short kimono was cut just a little down her thigh. The top half hung off one shoulder and revealed her black bra. A slight shiver ran through him. He had never really attempted to flirt with Ember. He found her interesting, but too complex for his tastes. But the sight of her now had his senses running south. Ember? Sigurd stepped back and moved behind the pillar to watch. "Can I talk to you?" Levi cautiously approached her. After the run-in with the other kitsune of Hope, he wasn't sure how she was going to react to him. Ember opened her hand. Sigurd's eyes widened in surprise. Instead of her dainty rapier that she always carried, a large black butcher's knife appeared. She planted the head into the ground with the blade towards Levi. The entire look of her now screamed, "Don't come near me." She looked like a yakuza. "Ember?" Levi took a few steps back, until he was out of swinging range. "What was sent to you were lies." "Photos don't lie," she replied, cutting him off. "Videos don't lie. If someone told me, I could pass it off as a lie. But seeing it with my own eyes..." "So you blame me?" His voice was angry. "I did everything because I had to." "Even becoming a traitor to your own guild and country? Selling gears that were provided to by your superiors on the black market for profit? Providing HIVN with information that could break League and Hope? Spreading lies that your guild chose you to bear the alliance by marrying me?" Ember's voice was sharp, and if it was a whip, Levi would be bleeding by now. "I won't marry a traitor and a thief." She looked at him. "Leave. Don't come near me again." "As you wish." Levi's voice sounded insulted. His weapon appeared in his hand. "You will tell me who lied to you, though, before I leave." Ember raised her hand and a burst of blue light burst forth, knocking him to the ground and forcing him to spawn elsewhere. Sigurd stared in disbelief. "Railgun? A baby skill? But Ember doesn't have a baby." He looked at his own hands. He wanted access to those skills, to fight side by side with a child of his own. Maybe Ember can help me. Carefully he approached her. Once just outside of firing range, he called out, "You won't kill me, will you?" Ember's butcher's knife vanished, and she turned to look at him. He could tell that even she was surprised she had used a baby skill. "Not you." Her voice was gentler than it had been with Levi. "What do you need, Sig?" "I have an odd request." He came closer until he was standing next to her. He wasn't going to ask what that was about. He knew Ember would tell him in her own time. Right now, he knew she needed a distraction. "I was wondering if you could help me create a baby orb." Ember's eyes widened. "A baby orb? Without being married?" "Yes." Sigurd scratched his head sheepishly. "If you're willing to do that for me, I can make it worth your while." His tone turned velvety and teasing. "You know how much I love my fun." Ember considered his offer. Turning around, she leaned against the bridge railing, slightly back to accentuate her chest. "Worth my while, eh?" She smiled wryly. "Can you really handle me?" "Oh." Sigurd returned her smile and boldly came closer to her until his chest was pressed up against hers. "I think the question is, can you handle me? I'm a wild stallion, and I will take you, break you, and have my way with you until you can't stand." Ember purred, letting a shiver ripple through her body and causing him to chuckle. "Then show me what you can do." That was all the incentive Sigurd needed. He moved swiftly, taking her from the bridge and guiding her back towards the bamboo forest. He had taken many kitsune to his favorite hiding spot, and today was no exception. Ember was going to feel just how wild he could be before they make an appeal to the gods for a baby orb for him. Ember... pause. Ember awoke the next morning to the feeling of arms wrapped around her body and feathers brushing her bare skin. She shivered, remembering the previous day. She was surprised her voice still worked with how loudly she screamed. "Enjoyed that, did you?" His voice purred in her ear. "I'm always up for more." Ember snuggled into him a bit. "I'll have to take you up on that offer more often. That felt good." She turned her head to look at him. "Appeal?" "Of course," he replied, already planning to give her more than just the appeal for the baby orb. It wasn't often a kitsune could handle him with as much ease as Ember had. He needed to intensify his play with her. Perhaps traumatized kitsune can handle more pain than the average kitsune. He shook the thought from his head and sat up. Crossing his legs loosely, he waited for her. Ember sat up and crawled forward. Okay, I need to skip quite a bit. Because it's an interesting scene between Ember and Sigurd. "Yeah," Sigurd replied. He wrapped his arms around her waist to hold her in place. "I'm ready when you are." Ember leaned back into his hands. She lowered her head and rested her forehead on his chest. Silence spread between them. Sigurd knew that his part to play was to support and be silent. Kitsune were the only ones who knew how to perform the appeal. As far as he knew, a few words were murmured, and a kitsune knew almost straight away whether their appeal was successful. Ember stayed in position for quite a while, long enough for Sigurd to wonder if she didn't want to tell him they failed, before she started to whimper. He jumped slightly, hearing her whimper and feeling what he assumed was tears rolling down his chest. He brought one hand higher up her back to try and comfort her. He wasn't sure what was going on. Was Ember crying because it failed? She raised her hands. One rested next to her head against his chest, and the other came up and covered his eyes. Before he could pull his head away, he was whisked somewhere else. He looked around in surprise. The cloudy expanse of the place gave the illusion that there was no floor. A soft whimpering to his right drew his attention to a very afraid Ember. Looking down at himself, I'm skipping bits and pieces because I gotta keep it G-rated. "Where are we?" he whispered to her. "There are creatures here I've never seen before." "This is Takamagahara." That's a mouthful. Ember whispered back. "Plane of high heaven. This is the realm of the gods." She moved back and away from a kasa obake that came near her. "We aren't supposed to come here until we pass away from our world." "That is correct." They both turned to look at 4 creatures that stood before them. "We, for the moment, represent the gods in their entirety." The giant red bird stood before them, with 3 other creatures, a white tiger, a blue serpent, and a black turtle. "Suzaku," Ember breathed. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Byakko, Seru, Genbu, why?" She lowered her head. "I mean no disrespect. I just don't understand." Suzaku came close and touched the center of her chest. "You are not attached to this Tengu, yet you allow him to have a baby orb with you. Do you not wish one for yourself?" "What do you mean, not attached?" Ember looked at him confused for a moment before smiling. "We don't have a marital bond, if that's what you mean, but we are friends." "You avoid my question," Suzaku smiled, and glanced over to Sigurd. "And you are not attached to this kitsune, and yet you request a baby orb through her?" Sigurd looked away. Ember wasn't the only traumatized one in the room. He also had his scars, which prevented him from truly feeling the need to be married. The gods know why. Indeed. Suzaku withdrew and closed his eyes momentarily in thought. "We will grant you 2 baby orbs. 1 for each of you. But know this. Both babies will know who their parents and siblings are. They will know, and they may respond to you in that way. Are you both agreeable to that?" Ember nodded her head without looking at Suzaku. She had no problems with that arrangement, and had no problems marrying Sigurd if he ever wanted to. Part of her resolved to tell him that, eventually. But now was not the time. Sigurd paused. His baby would recognize Ember as their mother. His baby would recognize her baby as its sibling. Could he handle that? Slowly, almost uncertainly, he nodded his head. "Very well." Suzaku flapped his wings hard. Both were blinded by light and wind. Sigurd's senses once again were changed. He could feel himself sitting on the ground, with Ember in his lap. Opening his eyes, he watched as she moved her hand from his eyes to his chest next to her head. He had so many questions, but now was not the time. Light formed under both of Ember's hands before she slumped against him. He knew the appeal was over. Ember? He gently moved her back and rested her against his hands. He looked at her hands. 2 orbs rested, one in either palm. Uncrossing his legs, he eased her to the ground. He pulled a piece of clothing over and put the orbs from her hands carefully onto it. He stared at their colouring. He could instinctively tell which one belonged to each of them. "Pretty, aren't they?" Ember said softly. He brought his attention back to her. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly. "Because I really want to celebrate and send you into a world of pleasure as thanks for helping me. I'm not so tired that I can't handle more from you." She bit her lip before continuing. "Celebrate with me, Sig. Your wish is my command." And that's it. Yeah, I definitely will not be continuing this one. Because I don't play Yokai Tamer anymore. And also the game became quite monotonous for me because there was no updates. There was no updates for ages. Drove me crackers. Anyway. As always, make sure to like, comment and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Let me know what kind of stories you want to hear. I do write mostly fantasy. A little bit of sci-fi. A little bit of romance, but mostly fantasy. Anything that's in my head with a little bit of real world connection to it, that's what I write. But yeah, I haven't decided which fan fiction story to continue or start. I am tossing up one of maybe the Yu-Gi-Oh fan fictions that I started. I'm thinking, is it Angelic Intentions? I've got Angelic Intentions or Angelic Embrace. I think it's Angelic Intentions. Where is it? Yu-Gi-Oh. Angelic Intentions. Either Angelic Intentions or Dreams of the Undead. Probably Dreams of the Undead, actually. One of them. Clones Mayhem and Natural Reality, I haven't decided. Help me decide. There is still a few more stories. So yeah, I will be recording. The next fanfiction I'll be recording will be the League Guild story. I think there's 11 chapters of that one. I believe. Yeah. 11 chapters. And then I've also got more of the Adventures of the Iron Wolves. I've still got chapter, is it 10, 11, 12 Aftermath, I think? 4 chapters of the first book to continue. Anyway, I will get there eventually. I'm gonna be recording and playing Sims at the same time for most of tonight. Yeah. Alright. But yeah, as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.